Hello and welcome to this webinar. Lovely to see you here and thank you for taking out the time to come and join. My name is Barry Osborne and I'm the CEO of Rural Mission Solutions. I've been working in rural ministry and mission for a very long time now and delighted that we've been able to move into using contemporary technology. And I'm here with my very good friend and colleague Gordon Banks, who's a Church Army officer, and I'm sure Gordon's ready to say hi to you.
Hello, God's blessings be upon you this evening. I have a rather long job title of Mission and Growth Partner in the Stafford Episcopal area in the Diocese of Lichfield. Basically, I partner with the Church of England churches in Staffordshire, helping them with mission, growth, evangelism, and have experience helping in rural areas and served as a Church Army officer in Northumberland, Cornwall and Sussex for over 30 years.
Thank you, Gordon. Now, there are a number of other webinars which are now available as videos, and on that website I gave you, you can browse those. So the seasonal webinars, 1 to others there. We also have a YouTube channel, and there are further videos there. We're expanding that hopefully during 2018 particularly. There'll be a number of very useful short videos there. But do go and have a look. Now, the 4 seasonal webinars, this is particularly Gordon's strength, and I'm going to ask him to explain something about the concept.
Yeah, I notice Hope Together have also picked up on this idea of a rhythm of mission that seeks to create a heartbeat and not a hiccup. This is perfectly suited to rural areas that have a natural rhythms, patterns, seasons and cycles. So in this we seek to go with the flow and always ask ourselves what's happening in the country, our county, our town or village. And in this we are seeking to match up with the seasons of the church's year that in 12-month cycle tell the Jesus story. So at the moment we're up around the winter period, and that's what we'll be looking at through this webinar.
Okay, so the first question is, what's going on at this time of year? So just to reflect, picking up on what Gordon has already explained, obviously the big issue for church life, for the calendar, is Christmas itself. We celebrate the incarnation, the coming of Jesus Christ, Son of God, to be the Savior of the world. So we rejoice in that. That's our big event. Now, what we want to say is that this is the big event, the church-related event in the secular world in the United Kingdom. Now, we obviously think an awful lot of Easter. Easter is so important. But in terms of engagement with the wider community, Christmas is by far and away the bigger of the two. So we need to think in terms of how we're going to use that and bridge with the wider community. Now, from the church side, we've got obviously Advent leading up to Christmas, so we can use things that relate to Advent. We'll be talking about that. There's Epiphany after Christmas, Candlemas a little bit later as well. And so we're going to be addressing those. But at the same time, there are things going on in the world around. So, of course, New Year, that's going to be another biggie within the secular society. Churches sometimes mark it as well. Did you realize that, I'm not quite sure how early it is in January, but quite early in January, there'll be very important cricket matches in Australia. So the Ashes will be on, and very important. So that'll be on the television, and people will be talking about it in various places. So we need to be aware of that. It's a way we can relate to what's going on in the sports world. Incidentally, excellent website the BBC runs, Sports Calendar. So if you search Sports Calendar BBC, you should be able to find it quite easily. It's a super website for telling you all the big events that are coming on for months and months ahead. And then there are local things. Actually, the Lincoln skating thing will hit the news. That'll hit national news as well. But there are sometimes local things, and you need to think it through, find out what's going on as we go through these things. So what we're going to do in this presentation is we're going to split it into 2 parts. Part 1, we're going to talk about various suggested activities through the winter months, and particularly at Christmas. Part 2 will be helpful resources. We've got lots of resources. One of the handouts is called the main handout. Now that will have all the web links so that you can find your way to all of these resources, and we'll try to keep that updated if we can as we move towards Christmas. We'll have to move through the helpful resources quite quickly, so don't worry if we haven't got onto them and time is going, because we'll go through them quite quickly at the end. Gordon.
Yeah, three important items indeed. The first thing is to say that whatever we do, we want to encourage you to do it really well. And think of your mission activities as if they're a shop window. And so go for quality. You may find people in your community who will come to special occasions. And if the experience they have when they come is one of quality, then they're far more likely to be open to receive the message of the Christian gospel and possibly become a regular part of your church. So go for quality. The second thing is to encourage you to use quality advertising. Try and get rid of those dog-eared old service sheets or carol sheets that have been around forever. Get something nice, bright, and there's lots of great material around as well. And things like the Christian Publicity Organization, CPO, we'll mention that later on as well, produces some fabulous resources at the time. And then plan forward. Asking yourself, well, we've got folks coming along, so what's the next step? That's a really key message when we're putting forward. Always be thinking, so we've got folks turning up for something, that what can we push them forward into and encourage them to come along and take a next step. Barry, how else might we make Christmas special?
Well, there are a number of ways that we need to think through. You've already mentioned the danger of just doing the same things we've done before. And I think at Christmas, that's so often what happens. You know, we sort of fall into a rut. We have carols by candlelight, and we have the lessons and the reading, lessons and carols and various things. And often, as you say, sometimes we're bringing out rather tired looking carol sheets. Really sad to do that. And it's giving those negative messages. Come on, this is our special event. Let's celebrate. Let's do it really, really well. So think, are there ways you can refresh it? Now, does anybody else do it better? Well, the answer is yes. Already our shops are full of all sorts of things. They're taking advantage of the Christmas holiday sense rather than the religious sense, but they're well organized, well in advance. They've thought it through. They've got their plans, their strategies in place. They've decided how much money they're going to spend, all of that. Now, sadly, don't hear much of that in churches. Just fall back to the same old, same old. And we need to think about how can we do things better. Somebody said to me recently, do you know the pub in our village celebrates Christmas better than the church? Isn't that sad? So what are you going to do to make it wonderful? And we hope not just wonderful, but full of wonder.
Indeed, Barry. And here are just some ideas to kick us off. Posada means in Spanish and is a Mexican custom. It's been around a wee while now and people are picking it up. But the idea is that during the leading up to the Christmas day, nativity sets of Mary and Joseph travel on a roster basis, visiting a different family or place every night. It can work in schools, it can work around your community, work in workplaces, all sorts of places. And basically, Mary and Joseph and maybe a donkey stay for a night and receive hospitality. And you can make this an opportunity to invite guests round to say special prayers. You could tie it in with caroling, and there are lots of resources available from the church army, and there's even a Grove booklet that explains more about this great opportunity of telling the Christmas story.
So if people, Gordon, if people go on the church army website and search for Posada, they'll get a very helpful set of information.
Indeed they will, and lots of good stuff they can download for free as well. That's right. Slow it down. Well, this morning in Costa, while having my coffee, I was serenaded with I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. Oh. And I thought, oh no, and it's everywhere. And it's only too easy to get caught up in all the frenetic activity. Why not offer space for prayer and reflection? After all, one of the older traditions of Advent was to consider the four last things: death, judgment, heaven, and hell. And so, you know, it's useful to think there is another side of Christmas to consider. Or you might usefully reflect on those for whom this time that's coming up is painful or difficult, but slow it down, be a little bit more reflective as well. And that might tie in with a Christmas book club. And there's three particular titles here that we can well recommend, but you may have others as well. You could even turn to a classic like Dickens' Christmas Carol. Might be something to read again and try and think about what the story is in that and its relevance for today. And then as we move into Advent, what about an Advent activity day for children, or for all age, or perhaps even messy Advent? I think it's a great time. In one church I was in, we had the wise men began their long journey. And the church I was in, we were able to put them on a windowsill that started at the back of the church with a star hanging over. And they kept moving every week closer and closer until Christmas Day, when they sat just to one side. Just a great way, because it began to build up and something, the story was going on as well. And then it's a big ask, but if you can put on a children's morning or afternoon on Christmas Eve, or as close as you can, you will get some very appreciative parents. They love the space to get those final jobs done. The children love this place to run around and not be confined, and also to be with other children. You get to teach the Christmas story, preferably using a quiz. Everyone is invited back to see a short play the children have practiced and a song they've also practiced. You will then offer them a simple lunch or afternoon tea and let them know about the rest of the Christmas services and activities. And one key thing to do, if you do run your quiz, run it again, this time children versus the adults. And that way the children get the teaching twice, and the adults often get beaten by the children, which is great fun as well. It's a big ask, but if you can manage it, it really does pay dividends. And in all of this, Barry, we need to talk about partnerships.
Yes, but before we do, I want to come back to your idea of having a quiz, because one of the items, I don't think it's on the handout, but it will be on the website, is in fact a Christmas quiz. Now,
brilliant.
What's amazing is how many Christians do not know accurately the biblical record relating to Christmas. And we buy into traditional ideas and get it wrong. For instance, how
donkey.
Yeah, no donkey. And well, we don't want to spoil it, but anyway, look for that quiz. You might be able to use it. Have a bit of fun, tease some people with it. So lots of great ideas there, and particularly using the Advent period just to prepare hearts and minds and thoughts, allow space for reflection. I like that. I like the book club idea as well. Right, partnership. What we want to do is say, don't do it on your own, do it with somebody else. Now, first of all, I want to talk to the churches. Now, one of the really annoying things in a village is that churches don't work together in partnership. I know they do some places, but in many places they don't. And sometimes, if my Anglican friends will just forgive me, sometimes the Church of England likes to sort of get everything organized. And I understand if it's a multi-parish benefice, I understand that getting all the dates in the diary is fine, but what about your brothers and sisters down at the Methodist chapel or the Baptist chapel? You know, really need to work together. Now, maybe there are resources in another church that could be really useful, and you could work as a team and plan it as a team. But can we actually show respect to one another? Now, it isn't just the Church of England, perhaps, who takes this as kind of an assumption of being the senior, the proper church, and expecting others to fit in around it. Sometimes you can get a very strong evangelical free church, and they'll do the same. It's so bad. Really, to do it at Christmas, almost unforgivable. But there are other people you can think about who might become partners. Now, this is where, if you are sensible, you can enhance everything that you're seeking to do to present the real message of Christmas. So think about talking with people from the parish council. Talk to the chairman of the parish council. Say you're making plans for Christmas. We wonder what the council has been thinking. You might find they've got some super ideas and plans, maybe nothing at all. But you're showing courtesy. It will pay you dividend if you do it. Schools always have a plan and a program. Find out what it is. See if you can tie in. And again, think ecumenically if you can, please, especially if it's a church school. Usually the pub will want to do something very special for Christmas. Make sure it's not on at the same time as a major church thing. You know, work it out together. Try and dovetail all these different things. And then there may be other organizations, Women's Institute, for example, and clubs and activities. See if they've got any plans and see how well you can work together. And if there's a village shop, if you're fortunate enough still to have a village shop, they'll want to do something. So see if you can feature in. And so maybe some of the ideas we're going to come up with in a minute may give you ideas of how to work with some of the wider community. Gordon.
Christmas tree festivals. I first came across these in Bodmin in Cornwall about 15 years ago, and they've grown in popularity. In my hometown, Stafford, the Anglican church there has over 60 trees of a standard height that they sell to charities and community groups. The group then decorates their tree, promoting their charity. There's an opening ceremony with the mayor. During these 6 days, various groups, school music groups and choirs use the space to put on musical events. And if you do that, it's good if one tree is a prayer tree. And again, I remember one small rural church in Sussex who offered silver stars on which people could write the names of loved ones who had either died or would be away over the Christmas period. So a great opportunity there for a Christmas tree festival, and it can work in all sorts of places as well. And then afterwards, well, after Christmas, strip the tree of its branches and turn it into a simple cross. Leave it lying around, ready to bring it to focus during Lent. During the week of Lent, you might like to add an artifact every week, a sponge, a pair of ladders, a whip, a bag of money, and you could use this cross as a focus for any Good Friday activities. Then using chicken wire as a frame, bind Oasis onto the cross and cover it with small flowers, usually white and gold. And this prepares the cross for Easter Sunday morning. And so you've made the journey from the crib to the cross, because after all, it's only a matter of time.
I think that's such a good idea, Gordon, really is.
Yeah, and I think it's a Methodist idea originally, and I think we've got a handout about that, or certainly we've got some information about how to do that as well. It really is quite a phenomenal, and certainly when people come in to see the cross when it's decorated for Easter Sunday, there's usually lots of kind of like, wow, because it just transforms. It really is fabulous. But anybody want any more details of how that actually works, what time it does, and all that kind of practical details, just drop me an email and I'm happy to, because I did it quite a number of years when I lived in Hove in Brighton.
Just to say, you'll get Gordon's email address at the end, and it's also in the handouts. So all of the information is there. You'll find it helpful to you. I want to talk to you about an event that's held in a Lincolnshire village with some friends of ours who are very much involved in fresh expressions in rural areas. And they have been running an event in their village, which is wonderful. And it starts with a Christmas Speci event, and I should imagine either mid to late afternoon perhaps. And so they would hope to get children and adults together, and not just a children's event, but really mixing it up and getting people from the community. Now, it's going to link to something much more, as a form of a nativity trail. So what actually happened was that at the end of the Messy event, the children were encouraged to come out into the church, and the leader said, we're going to go and see if we can find the baby Jesus. Come on, we'll all go out here. So they went out into the churchyard and found a number of people dressed up as shepherds. I'm not sure, they may even have had an odd sheep. And so everybody set up to ask the question, is the baby Jesus here? To which the shepherds say, no, but you might like to go down the road to the Methodist chapel because something's going on there. We've been hearing some singing. Go and see if there's there. Incidentally, there were some angels around earlier, so they went down to the chapel, and sure enough, there were some people dressed as angels and singing carols. And when they had finished, the question was posed again, is the baby Jesus here? And they replied, no. They obviously, you could script this. They said no, but we do understand that they may know something about him if you go down the road to the inn. So everybody went down the road to the pub, and when they got to the pub, again, there was carol singing going on, and they asked the question again on cue, is the baby Jesus here? And the landlord has his script, and he says, no, I think that is that the baby of Mary and Joseph. They were looking for lodgings with me, but I didn't have any room. I had to send them down the road, and so they went on this trail, and they ended up in what you can see in the picture here with a nativity scene, and the shepherds have made their way down, and so everything was ready. So they finally find the baby Jesus, and then afterwards come into the house for some carols and also for some refreshments. Now, earlier when Gordon was talking about Advent, he mentioned refreshments. We want to say, if you can do it with food, please do. Okay.
Indeed. Yeah.
Now, let me lead on from the nativity trail that was acted out to talk about a different idea. This is also, I think, a village in Lincolnshire that kicked this off. Maybe you've seen it in other places. You know those kind of illuminated signs people put on their houses of reindeer and Santa and so on? Well, you could make your own illuminated signs using rope lights and string lights. You'll find these if you've got an electricity shop anywhere near you, go and talk to them about it, or you can get them on Amazon. They're very cheap. And you can make your own display. Now, you might need to build it around either a plywood cutout, or you might build it around a copper wire frame. But you could put on these lights, or you can do other illuminators. And again, if it's not in the handouts, you'll find on the website there's an item there. What we would say is, remember, safety first. Okay, whatever you do with electricity, make sure it's going to be safe outdoors. Okay, but you could match this up, of course, with putting maybe some words in a laminated form saying something about the story. And what this village did was they had the whole thing. So it started off with some angels or some shepherds, then some angels, and then from there they went to Bethlehem and found Mary and Joseph and the baby, and then they had wise men. So it's very interesting, very clever idea. And they put it around the village with a note to say where the next picture was, so telling the story bit by bit. Gordon, you've got other ideas.
Indeed, Barry, and just picking up that, I hope people have been picking up that we have a passion for getting the story out of the church building. Nothing wrong in that, but these are opportunities to take it out into the village or into the community. And one of those ideas is Stations of the Crib. I mean, you might be familiar with Stations of the Cross, so you could use the same idea, but perhaps using laminated sheets, making a trail through the village that tell the story of the journey to Bethlehem. Or, to be more adventurous, you could think Palm Sunday and possibly a donkey. Here you could make the journey with various appropriate station stops. At each station there will be a short reading and a carol telling something of the story, and conclude somewhere for some nice refreshments, hot mince pie and mulled wine perhaps. And very importantly, do make sure it's a whole community event and involve as many people as you can. And you could link this in by building an outdoor crib scene where you could conclude your stations, maybe placing some key figures you have carried with you on the journey. And you could add to this by inviting people to dress up as characters for the nativity and have their photo taken. Obviously be careful of children, safeguarding, etc. And if possible, best to use their own camera. The ultimate Christmas selfie. And if you really want to get ahead of the game, you might, I know we want to hold back, but maybe you could invite people to take a picture now that they could then put onto something like Funky Pigeon and make their own Christmas card. Do you have a bus shelter? That would make a great nativity scene if you could do that as well. And one other thing I like to do is to have something that looks like a cross in the nativity scene, to make the connection between the child in the crib and the Christ on the cross, because they're one and the same. And linked with that, you could put an illuminated star on your church steeple or tower, or an illuminated cross, as I know one church in Cornwall does as well. So an opportunity there. There may be another place you could put a nice star or illuminated cross as well, depending. But so that's Christmas. We've done Christmas, Barry. Let's move on.
Okay, well, let's go to Epiphany. Now, Epiphany is when we celebrate the wise men coming, and they, of course, find Jesus and Mary in the house. And we all know that they bring gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And so is there a way of perhaps picking up on this? Now, of course, there's ways in which you can adapt the concept of giving gifts to pick up with the idea of the surrender of our lives to Christ, thinking of that passage in Romans chapter 12 about present your bodies as a living sacrifice. And of course, there are various hymns like When I Survey the Wondrous Cross that touch on that. So maybe it's an opportunity to think in terms of what are we bringing? And there's a carol, of course, that has this line about bringing in our hearts. So maybe you're going to do something, but what about somehow, this is where the community link could come in. Is there a village charity, something they're interested in? One village I worked in, they were very interested in the air ambulance. But is there a way in which you could link with a charity that helps children somewhere? So keep the emphasis on the children, street children, or something like that you could do. So that's Epiphany. Thinking it through, how can you continue to keep the theme running and the interest in the community high? We want the community to be buzzing with everything that's going on in the church. So Epiphany.
And just on Epiphany as well, I'll just chuck in there, go and check out Blessings of the Chalk that you use to make a mark over your door. Just go and check that out. Anyway, Candlemas, the dedication of Jesus, the presentation of Christ in the temple, the story told in Luke 2:22 to 40. This would be a time when all the candles that would be used throughout the year would be blessed. And so in this story, Jesus is offered to God according to tradition. So we could think about what could we offer to God? Where could we make a covenant to be a light in our community? So lots of opportunity there. You could celebrate the baptisms and a new spiritual life as well, inviting people back. Here we are bringing the light of Christ into the world. And so we're in February the 2nd in Candlemas. We need to backtrack a little bit back into January, Barry.
Okay, so let's think about starting the new year. Obviously, for many people, this is important. They're thinking about New Year promises and all sorts of things that are going on. No doubt there'll be fireworks and all sorts of things happening. So what can we do? Well, many churches use this as an opportunity to focus on a season of prayer. Now, if your church is the kind of church that prayer has got a high profile and people are comfortable leading prayers and praying extemporary, well, that's fine. But some churches aren't quite there. There's a wonderful booklet by SGM, and I forgot what their life words, SGM Life Words, and they have a wonderful book on prayer called Inspiring Prayer, just to help people to pray. So maybe you could set aside some times or have times of waiting on God, or look at different ways of praying. And then what about running some thematic events through the first part of the new year? Again, use food if you can. Excuse me. So you might want to do something on the theme of thankfulness as you look back over the past year, on forgiveness, again, if we think about mistakes we've made or things we've left undone, and then looking forward to hope. So thematic things. And then maybe following Christmas, what about whatever happened to that baby? Now that's not a bad snappy title you might want to put up outside your church. And you could do it in a number of ways. You could have, for instance, a sponsored reading of St. Matthew's Gospel with different people taking part. You could encourage people to handwrite a gospel. Now, Matthew's 28 chapters long. It's rather long. But I have known churches that have handwritten St. Mark's Gospel. But unfortunately, it's not much about the birth of Jesus in St. Mark's Gospel. But, you know, handwriting a gospel with different people in the community taking part, adults and children, important people like the chairman of the parish council and so on, each writing a chapter. So various things. Follow up on whatever happened to that baby.
And just to jump in there, Barry, thinking ecumenically in partnership, the first Sunday in the year is normally for the Methodist what they call covenant service. Covenant Sunday, so well worth seeing if that's happening. You've got a Methodist group in your church as well, maybe even think about joining them. It's a very special service for the Methodists and quite demanding as well. But yeah, moving on,
Gordon,
sorry, Barry?
Just stay with that, because I think that's important. You said it's quite demanding. The wording of that covenant in the Methodist tradition is really something you need to think very deeply about. And if you've never seen it, never read it, don't know anything about it, as Gordon said, see if you could make an arrangement maybe to move your service, if you're in another church, to the Methodists on that Sunday. So you stand with your Methodist Christian friends as they go through this particular process.
Yeah, indeed. So why not arrange something to bless the community and not yourself? Barry and I are very keen that we do that, that we reach out as well. So could this be an outing for older folk maybe? Is there a friendly farmer who would welcome a group to the farmhouse for a simple soup and roll lunch and a chat about life on the farm? I'm sure you could, think of something that you could do around in your community that would be just there to bless them, maybe a bit of tidying up after the Christmas time or whatever. And then we could also run a pudding festival. Barry, you're fond of your puddings, aren't you?
I am, and my waistline bears witness to that. In one village where I was the minister, we arranged a pudding festival. We invited people from the wider community to come up with their favourite puddings. We wanted them to be able to bring a sample and also a recipe. And we photographed each of the puddings that were brought, and we put that with the recipe into a book with a conversion chart as well. And we did this as a sponsored event. So we didn't charge, but the church itself provided a couple of options for a main course and provided wine, and then people were able to sample the puddings. They could have something from everyone. There were 21 puddings there, and either something from everyone or target their favorite. But it was great fun, and we raised voluntarily several £100s on the night, and then several £100 more by selling the recipe books, and people bought them for their family and friends and used them as stocking fillers the following year and so on. They're great. And if anybody wants to see one, you've got my email address coming up. If you email me, I'll send you one free of charge.
I mentioned about the a friendly farmer, but you may again be fortunate to have a pub in your village or town. And so could you maybe set up fireside chats, maybe using table talk as a discussion starter, or maybe in any question sessions, or maybe get the vicar there and grill the vicar, or perhaps poach the pastor, basically giving people free rein to ask anything they like of their vicar. And of course, you will told everybody who came to your Christmas services about a course you will be running to explain more about what happened to Jesus when he grew up. So run Christianity Explored, Alpha, Pilgrim, or some other course to explain the Christian basics. This is the idea of moving on to what next. If there's people around in your Christmas services, so what next? How can you help them on that journey of exploring the Christian faith?
Thank you, Gordon. Now, many people think that when winter comes, all the plants are dying off. Well, some will, but of course, often there's much going on under the surface. So I want to just take a moment to say, what about the life, the spiritual life of your church, and whether during the winter time, when there aren't perhaps quite so many things going on, you could plan something to improve the quality. Now, two ideas. One is you could run some sort of course on deepening faith, on issues of discipleship. Plenty of resources. We've mentioned Grove books already. But then also, what about running a kind of series of meetings exploring what the church's story is? This is sharing your story. Gordon sometimes talks about this, linking back to historic fire pit stories when people pre-television used to gather around and share their stories. But asking the question, as a church, who are we? What is it that defines our church? Where did we come from? How did this church start? Who did start it? Why are we here? What's the purpose of being here? And where are we going? What's our plan for the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years? So using the time to explore that and think in terms of our relationship to God, great way of moving forward.
Yeah, and that I love a quote that reminded me of, Barry, that traditionalism is the dead faith of the living tradition is the living faith of the dead.
Very good.
But moving on swiftly, that's not one of my quotes, by the way. I picked that one up from somebody else. But moving on swiftly into resources, and we'll move through, as Barry said earlier, swiftly, as they're either on the handouts, on the Rural Mission Solutions webpage or Facebook page, or you can get in touch with either Barry or myself and ask them to send you more details. CPO produce some fabulous resources, posters, cards, banners, etc., that can be made bespoke, and now you have an option of adding on the website www.christianity.org.uk onto any bespoke material. Hope together, Barry.
Yeah, but that web link that you mentioned, christianity.org.uk, runs under Churches Together in England and is basically owned by all the main denominations in the UK, and it's a tremendous resource for people inquiring about the Christian faith. So if you're not familiar with that, hopefully, I think that's in the handout. Look it up, and if you produce a church magazine, make sure that you've got that on the footer of every page. So
Absolutely.
Hope Together. Now, you should be familiar with Hope Together. It's been around a long time. It's going to be a big year next year, Hope 18. And they've produced some wonderful stuff for Christmas, including a carol book. That's the Journey to Bethlehem. Wonderful resource there. Do commend that to you. And these are available either free or at a very low cost. Check out the Hope Together website and find out. Also, they do this Christmas magazine, and you can see Miranda Hart is being featured this year. So great thing. Buy enough and distribute it to every household in your village. Hope Together, highly recommended.
Yeah, and another good solid organisation, been around a long time, producing some fabulous gifts and ideas to give away, is the Scripture Union. And again, as I said, just a great place to go and visit, have a rummage around, see what they've got, because they've got party pack and comic, as you can see there, and lots more. Recommend the Scripture Union. And then, Barry, we've got the Bible Society.
Indeed we do. And again, a tremendous number of resources. Superb books. Gordon was telling me earlier today about a book that he's bought, incredibly cheap, really good value. You can buy them at a discount for volumes. Really helpful. Give them away. Maybe something you might get and give away at school. Certainly, I think the book that Gordon was talking was about preschool and maybe Key Stage 1, but find out what they've got. There's also a free video which you can download and use. And if anybody is frantically trying to write these email addresses down, stop. They'll all be in the handout. You don't need to worry.
Yeah, and if you happen to have DVP, that's the video projector, and a lot of people do, even some of the rural churches now have these. Here's a great way of getting hold of some fantastic videos as well, and a great way to spice up your sermon, or maybe even forget the sermon and use one of these and invite people to reflect on it, or maybe lighten the mood with one of the more funny ones, or as folk begin to gather for worship, that you could play something that begins to set the scene. There is a cost to download, but it's not massively expensive. Be a great investment. And on videos, check out some brilliant ones on YouTube from a group called Apologetics. That ends with an X, and there's a great version of Hotel Can't Afford You that's a spoof of Hotel California. Well worth looking out on YouTube and put in Apologetics. Barry, are we going to get in the picture?
Yes, Gordon's already talked about this. This is where you set up a scene, you have costumes and people can dress up, so they're part of the scene. Maybe with church people as well, and you can take a picture with their camera and they can take it away. They can then use that on producing a card if you do it early enough. So there's that. Okay, so get in the picture. Originally a Baptist idea, but lots of people have found this. And if you don't want to run to the costumes and you've got someone really clever who could do life-size pictures of a shepherd or a wise man and leave a hole where the face would be. Do you remember those seaside things where you put your head through? You could do that for Christmas, couldn't you? Do your own picture. So great ideas.
So no doubt you will have a lot more visitors over Christmas period. Ensure they go away with something in their hand. If you are producing a carol or service sheet, think about something that could be taken home. So you could include a simple quiz. You mentioned we've got one. Christmas trivia, some prayers to be used, and most importantly, a website, as we've mentioned, www.christianity.org.uk. And by the way, don't forget at some time to practice singing Happy Birthday to Jesus and invite people to sing this when they sit down for the Christmas dinner. And usually, if you've done it at the right time, the children will remind them to sing Happy Birthday to Jesus, because sometimes it's his birthday, but we forget about it. So sing Happy Birthday to Jesus, lots of fun. Christianity Explored is a great place to point people towards. On that site they can ask questions, find out about basic Christian beliefs, and search for where there might be a course running near them. That is a great feature that's on this Christianity Explored site. So remembering again, very often in rural areas we will have people visiting, and so we've got to think kingdom wise and what can we kind of help them when they get back home, and they're reflecting on their time as well. So they've gone away with something in their hand and they're thinking, what is all this about? Let's explore it a little bit more.
Indeed.
Barry.
I think we need much more confidence in the work of the Holy Spirit. Now, we come up with all these ideas. We've given people lots and lots of ideas that people could use, but to approach it prayerfully, but to be aware that God is always seeking people, always longing to draw people into a deeper relationship with himself. That's happening all the time. That's the unseen work of the gospel. So we're partnering with God and just being aware of that and have confidence. So be bold and use the opportunity.
Expectant, Barry.
Absolutely. And I think I want to say again, make everything you do full of wonder. Make it wonderful. Final resource we want to mention is Germinate. Used to be known as the Arthur Rank Centre. It's changed its name, is changing its name. Do you get Country Way? It's full of ideas, wonderful ideas, and we commend that to you. It's now available online as a free resource. Methodists have just brought out a publication called a Discipling Presence. Actually, the Methodists and the United Reformed Church together have done that, and we commend that to you. Lots of things going on. The Church of England has an interesting program. That's on the sheets. Lots of denominations are running special things. Let's see if we can make Christmas and winter 2017 into 2018 a wonderful time when more people in the community come to know Jesus as their personal Saviour. So,
Amen to that.
Thank you for your sharing today. If you haven't downloaded those handouts, just know you can. If you run out of time, don't worry, they'll be on the website. The one you really ought to try to download first, if you're still waiting to do it, is the main handout. That's the one with all those web addresses so that you've got those. There's going to be a very short survey. It will immediately follow the ending of this, and we would be grateful if you would be kind enough to complete it. Thank you for being here. We are going to be running not only the seasonal, but lots of other webinars in the coming months. And those who've registered online, they'll get the information. Some people may be watching this as a video recording. That's going to be on our website, replacing the one that's there at the moment. And if you are watching it as a video recording, well, you'll have to go to the website, of course, so you can't do any downloads and you won't be able to take part in the survey. But we hope that we have blessed you. That's our desire.
And if anybody's got any ideas for webinars, Barry, we're very up for that, or indeed any good resources or anything, stories they've got to tell of what they've done. That's what you and I do. We garner stories and try and spread them around, don't we? Absolutely.
So, for instance, we've got webinars on how to use prayer in terms of mission, how to share our faith with our friends, how the image of the church can sometimes hinder the message we're trying to share. We are preparing one on rural ecumenism. We're hoping to have a series of webinars on children's ministry. We'd love to hear from anybody who feels they could help us contribute to the theme of children's ministry in rural areas. So please keep your eyes and ears open. information is on the Rural Mission Solutions Facebook page, but if you have signed up for a webinar, unless you ask to come off the list, we will send you information from time to time. So that's it. Goodbye from me. God bless you so much for being here. We do hope we've blessed and inspired and encouraged you. Keep the light shining wherever you are.
Amen to that, Barry. Indeed, God blessings to you on you, and may you know Jesus and make Jesus known over this wonderful opportunity that lies ahead of us in the next few months.
So on that, Gordon and I are going to turn our microphones off. The picture on the screen will remain for a few moments. Goodbye.